everyone, welcome to a really interesting episode of BioLogic Science News. Today I want to talk about C-sections, and how they might be influencing our evolution. If a woman's pelvis is too small, or the baby is too large for a safe childbirth, this can lead to a situation called fetopelvic disproportion. The fetus and the pelvis are sized too differently for a healthy, safe childbirth. And this can lead to complications like obstructed labor. In the time before modern medicine, an obstructed labor would likely lead to the death of both the baby and the mother. But with advances in healthcare, we can now conduct C-sections and surgically remove the baby from the uterus through an incision made in the abdomen. Fortunately, this will save the woman and her baby. But according to a new paper by theoretical biologist Philip Mitterrocher and his colleagues, this is having an evolutionary influence on our species. In ages past, fetopelvic disproportion could be seen as an evolutionary mechanism by which children too large for their mothers were at really high risk of death in childbirth, as were the mothers who carried them. This created a selection pressure against larger children, or against mothers carrying children too large to be born. This was kind of like a top-down control on human head size. But with C-sections, babies who might have died from fetopelvic disproportion and obstructed labor are instead being born happy and healthy and living until they have kids of their own. This is where Dr. Mitterrocher's paper gets interesting, because his team looked at data that showed women who were born through C-section themselves were 1.66 times as likely to require C-sections to give birth to children of their own. And this makes sense if you break it down by an evolutionary kind of logic. C-sections are common in the developed world, and women choose to use them to give birth for numerous reasons. There could be any number of potential health problems that require a C-section, not just an obstructed delivery. There are also a number of non-medical reasons to have a C-section, like the mother's personal desire not to experience the physical pain of manual childbirth. But the point, that of babies being born through C-sections, is that at least some of them needed that procedure because they would have been in obstructed labor because of fetopelvic disproportion. In older days, these babies would have died in childbirth because of the obstruction. But because of C-sections, they're now adults giving birth to their own kids. And we're seeing this genetic trait for a relatively large fetal head size that's making these mothers also require C-sections to give birth on their own. And so as long as C-sections in the modern world remain common, we might even see the slow emergence of a subpopulation of people who cannot give birth manually. They require surgical interference in order to successfully reproduce. This is kind of crazy if you think about it in the way that a lot of angiosperms, a lot of flowering plants, have evolved to be dependent on insects like bees to pollinate other individuals and to help them reproduce. And so in this way, this hypothetical subpopulation of people who can't give birth manually anymore, they would be showing kind of the first signs of a coevolutionary symbiosis with technology. They require advanced technology, the kind that can perform C-sections in order to reproduce. Alongside inventions like retinal implants, prosthetics, and artificial hearts, this is just one more way in which humanity is turning itself into a cybernetic species. Counterintuitively, the data also showed that men born through C-section didn't have this statistical influence on the likelihood of their kids needing to be born through C-section. It was seemingly a trait that was only found in mothers. Mitterrocher argues that it's actually quite likely that there is some paternal influence on fetus size, but just that the data that he was looking at was either too coarse to see the effect, or not looking in the right place. There are still a lot of loose ends here that need to be cleaned up, questions that need to be answered, and data that needs to be analyzed in greater detail. This isn't going to radically alter the human species, especially not anytime soon, but it is an example, one among many thousands, of the ways in which that we evolve in response to our immediate environment.